My formative years were largely conditioned by the Lebanese Civil War, which in my case also coincided with a family tragedy that resulted in my mother's untimely death. I came of age in the early 70s, in Beirut, and was happy to have met a few like-minded friends barely a year before the violence transfigured what was then acclaimed as the Little Paris of the Middle East. We were a group of poets and musicians, passionate and idealistic, dreamers with emancipated opinions. But you could feel the rising political tension and the first tremors of the horror that was soon to follow. And yet we met in spite of the curfews to discuss some cosmic concept, recite a new poem, or play the latest Moody Blues album. All that came to an abrupt end when my plane was the last to fly out of the airport that was then lost to the war that tore apart this unfortunate country. The blast that originated in my homeland was soon relayed by a much more personal one that took my mother's life and turned days, weeks, and years into an abacus of bereavement. The dramatic events that took place more than 35 years ago now still feel raw to this day. They catapulted me through life. They colored and shaped my artistic expression. My early graphite and charcoal drawings are sparks of a cathartic clash between death and desire, eros and thanatos, progeny of a visceral fusion of incompatibles. They displaced classical forms and hurled them to the edge of decay, unraveling their logic to the all-surrounding chaos. If products of a war of opposites, they are first a tissue of connectivity itself, rife with shape-shifting forms in a permanent flux of change. The teeming life frolicking in this bed of quickening multitude goes on to cluster in miasmic amalgams, dark formations looming over the sutured horizon of a despondent mindscape. I was to become the consciousness of chaos, and in the turmoil of my enmeshment, the tempest of its self-lacerating elements. However, the protean trace engaged in infinite transformation is also subject to reversals and the tyranny of an ideal turned upside down. To paint the world black, to topple every certitude, to make negation rule and turn that process into an end in itself. Thus rose the skeletal remains of my agony, hoisting hollowed carcasses like flags of insurgents under a blinding sun. A cycle of ablution followed, cauterizing my festering thoughts into whitewashed, abstract paradigms. The organic swarms, now sublimated into hard-edged mechanisms, rest isolated on the stark, white, and empty ground of new concept-driven paintings. Thus stands Civil War Rationale, with its pared-down aesthetic, its economy of forms held in negative space, a vacuous matrix amplifying their disjointed presence into ciphers of absence and loss.